Welcome. Ziggy1X here with another NieR reincarnation video. And today I'll be assuming the role of Professor Ziggy1X. And I'll be schooling y'all today on the perceived versus intrinsic value of this game. In short, how to properly monetize it so that everybody wins. To help understand this better, I will be introducing several real-world principles that are tried and true methods. This is part 3, the final part of my limited series, Saving NieR Reincarnation. And I first want to thank everyone for joining me in this journey thus far. I would also like to take a moment to offer my thanks to the Reddit community for their input and feedback on the topic of this final video. I will be including a link to my Reddit post in this video description. So please feel free to head over there and check it out. Many of the ideas for this video came from that thread. So before we begin, let us briefly summarize what we have learned so far. In the first part of this series, we discussed real money and how it strengthens the perceived value of a fiat or paper currency. We then compared and contrasted this to the architecture of NieR reincarnation, as it is structured in a similar way, with its direct connection to Yoko Taro standing as the intrinsic value and the in-game economy function as a form of fiat based on the player's faith in the series creator. For a full semester of economics, just go check out my other videos. We do it in less than 20 minutes and there's a lot of good stuff in there. So in part 2, we focused on consistency through storycraft, using this as a vehicle to share my own experiences and enjoyment within the game. Using this as a launch point, we further explored together what consistency looks like from a developer side, as well as what players should reasonably expect. We all gain enjoyment to varying degrees, and in our own chosen ways. The narrative is the glue that holds it together. This was further reinforced in the wake of the powerful conclusion of the Sun and Moon story arc. This is among many of the reasons why we play the game. The elements of the game that leave the longest lasting impression with its players are its greatest strengths. It is these that keep us coming back for more while allowing ourselves to become lost in the ebb and the flow, while inversely tolerating the missteps that arise on occasion. As I pointed out in my previous video, we came because this was a NieR game. We stayed because of the added value offered. Those who continue to stay still perceive the value as a worthwhile exchange for their precious time, while those who leave have ceased to see for reasons of their own. My argument from the beginning is that we have a game that is exceptional, but has never been properly leveraged by the developers. So with all this said, let's finally save NieR reincarnation together. So, how many of you have heard those ads that go something like this? Download this game now and you'll get 100, no 200, no 999 free draws, plus all the best champions, weapons, etc. All this plus obscure in-game currency A, B, and C. Totally free to play. We don't want your money. Hurry, the deal ends today, but we'll be running it again tomorrow. I've heard them. I see them on the ads every day when I play the game. So what's the difference between that and NieR reincarnation? Our lizard brain sees these ads and it says to us, wow, what a great deal. But then our rational brain asks the real question as to why. Because we all know that for a game to subsist, it must be funded in some way, either by its paying customers or subsidized elsewhere. There is also an added problem of vagueness. None of us who don't play a game understand what currency A, B, and C are and what purpose they serve, nor what the uses of its values are within the respective game that it represents. This sort of lizard brain advertising works to get people to download the game, but seldom to ever retain interest. The why is lacking, as in why I should care about your game, even if you are willing to offer me everything therein. This, thankfully, is the opposite to NieR reincarnation, as we have established in my first video, the why being a Yoko Taro story, with the broader NieR narrative. Potential players will be interested by this association to Taro, and then once playing, that interest would be increased, in theory, through the impressive polish of the game, especially with all the recent publicity surrounding NieR Automata through the release of the anime. Hopefully we see an end to that, and the Nintendo Switch port. Reincarnation is very cleverly marketed at the onset as the first NieR game for mobile devices. This can be expanded upon with additional marketing and push, and with the maturity of the game, the expansive amounts of content available for it, and its impressive visuals, among other things. But again, garnering enjoyment for the game has never been the issue. The game has overwhelmingly positive player feedback, and deservedly so. The issues begin to arise when we begin to peel back those layers. This is a free-to-play mobile game. There is no price for admission, and many prominent figures in the community are tremendously successful at tackling all the in-game content without investing a single penny back into the game. Within the mobile gaming community, there is a certain pride that players take in maintaining their free-to-play status. It is widely seen as a mark of accomplishment, like you beat the developers at their own game. And while they are trying to lure you into spend, you instead, through cunning and tact, outwitted them and proved your gaming chops. Or at least this is a very common mindset amongst players, and this is precisely the mindset that the developers need to overcome. So, how does this change happen? By properly incentivizing and rewarding those players who are on the fence. In short, there must be a paradigm shift within the collective imagination of the community as a whole. And no amount of myself or others gushing over the game will accomplish this. It has to be the developers who light the torch so the rest of us can carry it. So let's talk a little bit more about this paradigm shift and what it looks like, then how to leverage this into financial stability. First, the players have to want to spend. That is the first and most important step. If the desire exists to purchase a good or service willingly, we each adjust our views and biases of this thing to accommodate this desire. If the need of a purchase is seen as adversarial, then our attitude adjusts appropriately to reflect that position. This part is purely psychological. However, the latter perception of animus from the developer is largely the prevailing view of players in the gacha mobile gaming community, as mobile games are generally very predatory in their marketing, promotion, monetization, and general behavior. Credit where credit is due, NieR Reincarnation has never come off as any of these things, just very expensive, with little added value for the added expense. Clearly, the drive to craft a fully contained experience was at the forefront of the planning and execution of this game, with monetization almost feeling like an afterthought. So then how do the developers recover the upfront costs, as well as the cost of maintaining and adding regular new content to the game? To drive further into this, let's discuss the marketing principles used by the developers of NieR Reincarnation and compare these to other successful examples within similar frameworks. The first question we have to ask is, why do retailers sell their flagship products at a loss? In the specific case of NieR Reincarnation, as previously discussed, it is a free-to-play download that includes the entire game. So at this point, the developers have recovered none of their investment, let alone turned a profit. Take gaming consoles as another example of this. Most of these are sold at a loss. Another example is supermarkets, discounting popular products to a ridiculous degree and taking sizable losses on these individual products. Why do they do this? It is because they expect you to buy more. When you purchase an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Nintendo, you inevitably buy the games. Why? Because the consumer wants to maximize the value of their purchase, and we change our mindset to accomplish this. If I was to spend $400 on a console and never purchase a game, that console was a wasted expense. If I only purchased one game, then I essentially spent nearly $500 for a single game. What this means is that the value of a thing such as this increases with every additional purchase that I make. The more you invest in it, the more worthwhile the initial purchase becomes, as it is the vehicle that hosts all future purchases. This is the paradigm shift. These console manufacturers take a cut out of all the transactions that pass through their physical and digital storefronts. So every time the owner purchases a shiny new copy of Automata: The End of Yorha Edition, Nintendo gets a cut of this. It is the reason why the hardware is sold at a loss. This is also why Walmart sells eggs and milk at a loss. They expect you to purchase the additional goods with the service, and they use these discounted items just to get you in the door. So, with this profitable strategy now clearly laid out, as well as the understanding that NieR Reincarnation is already actively a participant in this model, then we need to discuss how the developers of Reincarnation are falling or failing at further leveraging this model to increase their own revenue. Again, we come back to the paradigm shift in the collective imagination of the players. As we see it, we already have the game. We can enjoy it in its entirety and are given the ability and tools to master every aspect of it without paying a single red penny. So, outside of the desire to do more faster or to collect elements that offer additional aesthetics and power, there is not a pressing need to spend our hard-earned money when every aspect of the game is within reach. Juxtaposed to this is the developer's need to make money, or else the game ceases to exist. So, how does the developer incentivize the player to pay? Is it through dishonesty and coercion? Or is it through goodwill and perceived intrinsic value? It is obviously the latter. And as I mentioned earlier, we are paying customers. We will shift our views and the desires to accommodate this expense, so long as we see ourselves as willing participants and that there is a real benefit to it. I will also note that the easier path is always dishonesty and coercion. But when dishonesty is employed, the community always, and I mean always, finds out and responds about how you would expect. So, moving forward from here, let's assume that the players are generally united in goodwill towards the game. Now the developers need to overcome the next hurdle, and this is creating a realistic pathway of entry for all potential paying players, and adding additional value to the game based off this. So, here is the current state of the paid shop. For the low price of what amounts to an entire day's worth of meals, you can buy a single premium 10-pole that will most likely disappoint you, unlike that mouth-watering food we passed on. Also, as an added bonus, we will pick up 1/5 of a useful item or two, and a resource that can be farmed literally anywhere else in the game. While we are on the topic of food, by the way, let's then pick up the super duper premium pack that costs as much as what many people make an entire day's work, all to make 3 premium 10-poles and change. But hey, you're probably still going to be disappointed to some degree, but at least you get a whole useful item or two, and even more of a resource that can literally be farmed anywhere else in the game. This will act as a balm to soothe the sting of your disappointment when your sacrificed labors for the entire day are met with very little return. Is it any wonder that these bundled deals are looked upon as bad investments? The great hurdle of the paid shop in NieR Reincarnation is the paid shop. It is its own worst enemy. It is the weakest aspect of the game, as well as being the element it needs to ultimately thrive. The problem of the paid shop always has and continues to be its inability to cater to the more casual spenders and those testing the waters with small purchases. There is also the issue of diminishing value. There once was an arguable value in the paid shop. This has long since passed, and is only the providence of those willing to invest heavily into the game. The exclusivity and lack of value are without a doubt holding the game back. So, let's explore this a little bit more. There are principles that govern the marketplace of insurance, and this is a communal pooling of resources to offset costs and expenses. A structure is built that allows insurance companies to perform their jobs by taking a buy-in from all participants. This also means that the price of admission is steeply discounted from what it would be otherwise. The more who participate, the less each participant must spend, and the price to buy in to a given insurance policy is steeply offset by the amount paid out in the event of a qualifying claim. Because the payout is disproportionate to the buy-in, it has to be offset by a bulwark of collected resources from every participant paying into the pool. If participants don't contribute, then the entire system fails. In a free-to-play title like NieR Reincarnation, the best model is one of steady revenue from the player base. The problem with NieR Reincarnation is that it is positioned as a luxury commodity. The problem with luxury commodities is that you do not sell as many of them due to the price of admission being steeply disproportionate to its practicality. The higher the luxury of an item, the less of it is sold, making way for alternative markets where cheaper versions of an item are distributed in much higher volumes. The best thing that ever happened to the automobile industry, for example, was Henry Ford and his assembly line. So in short, the best thing that could happen to the luxury item was when it was mass-produced and made affordable. NieR Reincarnation needs to pull a Henry Ford and make an assembly line. To accomplish this, first, there must be a need. Not a compulsory need, but a desire. This is the paradigm shift. Second, there must be a value. Third, the price of entry must be affordable for all and luxurious for those who choose to indulge. Opening one's wallet is the first obstacle to overcome, but there needs to be a reward compensatory to the leap of faith taken. Then there must be a way to easily and effortlessly continue contributing. The structure of the paid shop has always been at odds with this mindset, and the entry-level bundles sit somewhere in the ballpark of $25 US. To put this further into perspective and not make another food comparison, but instead we'll compare apples to apples. There are any number of excellent AAA titles that you can be purchased from Steam for less than this, and there is a full value offered with these over a disappointing single tentpole. So, the best way to open players' wallets is to offer short and long-term value. This is not to say that straight gem purchases should be done away with in favor of a more complex model, quite the contrary. As I mentioned before, there should be a luxury purchase item for those who wish to indulge. Instead, what I'm proposing here is much more like how insurance is handled, in that there needs to be a steady income for the developers with a price tag that is affordable to all. It completely boggles the mind that the developers have not opted in to implement a monthly subscription for the game that offered, at minimum, a gem allowance. I don't understand this, and frankly, the entire community does not understand this. Every other mobile title I've ever played, as well as many other console and PC titles, have built their base revenue around this model. It is also how Netflix first seized control of the movie rentals business from Blockbuster Video and eventually pioneered the digital streaming space that is now the prevailing way that media is consumed. So again, these are tried and true methods. Reincarnation needs to start with this. Again, it must fulfill a real need, add value, and be affordable. This means that for it to truly succeed, it cannot be just a gem subscription, although this would be a welcomed addition even at its most pedestrian form. No, it needs to offer perks and additional goodies that can only be obtained through the subscription. Furthermore, the player must work for the rewards. Nobody wants a subscription that just delivers the goodies all at once. Then we are left with nothing else to look forward to. The subscription needs to incentivize players to want to log in and play the game. If so, then the developers succeed on two fronts: that of hours played, and a happy side effect of a steady paycheck. A few suggestions for this would be cosmetics and costumes, for costumes and weapons. Allow for any non-competitive play to allow for any costume or weapon model to be used, so switch them up. Let's say these costumes and weapons are purely cosmetic, something similar to what we got for our handout 2B that just came with the anniversary. This is something that can be used as a cosmetic costume, and is something that the fans of NieR Automata will appreciate, but it doesn't offer any significant game-breaking power. So, let's also say that we add daily challenges for additional gem rewards, as well as perks like farming 100 battles at a time instead of only 10. This way, players can enjoy these rewards without making a system that twists players' arms into participating. This will garner goodwill and add value to the subscription service. But above all else, since it is a service that pays out its rewards through the work of the players and over the course of time, make it very affordable. Let's suggest under $10. I assure you, this will not devalue it. This will not devalue the worth of other paid bundles in the shop, because this bundle will still require budgeting and will not act as an immediate payout. These packs will still carry, the other packs will still carry a premium. But additionally, there might be perks like improved success, this is on the subscription side of things, to rare memoir acquisition and upgrades, and even increased storage capacity for these and other items, just as a few helpful perks that the players would appreciate immensely. Developers sell quality of life, and players will happily participate. Be extremely generous with the gem rewards, even as high as 3,000 paid and 3,000 free throughout the course of the month. Okay, now let's take this idea one step further and implement a premium subscription that includes this as well as a guild and multiplayer perk pack. If the concern is cost, then price the service accordingly, but not too high. You want to entice people into buying in and placing the subscription on an auto renewal like they would the streaming video service. But you also want to reward those participants with an experience that is a cut above everything else. If this was to become a vehicle for competitive play, then there are plenty who would gladly buy into it, and the additional costs of infrastructure would be more than compensated. This will also aid in creating a more competitive element surrounding the game that pits players against each other. The more competitive the players are, the more likely they are to invest financially into the system. For each player's hard-won cash, you are providing them with a valuable service, one they gladly pay for. You are securing a steady stream of revenue, and you are incentivizing excitement, cooperation, and healthy competition. All of these things are to the game's benefit. The competitive play can be a mixture of co-op and PvP. There are any number of examples of these out there, but a few that come to mind are raid bosses that act as a damage race, team battles, not unlike Arena, but ranked separately and ranked as a team effort. Standard Arena, of course, would remain outside of this model. And these few other options alone would offer a tremendous value that is added to what the game experience would be. And it wouldn't require an excessive amount of work on the part of the developers to implement these. These are merely suggestions, but these act as a means of opening up the conversation to a more complete experience within the game, as well as incentivizing steady revenue from its players. In short, there must be a sustainable spending reward loop. Finally, there must be value added to the premium bundles. These should be items that hold actual value in the current game, and not packs that have been outdated for almost a year. Also, these bundles need to be structured such that they do not price out 90% of the community. Lower entry points assures impulse buys, while potentially raising the ceiling for big spenders out there in the form of whale packs. With new items, materials, and the other added goodies that we have received through the anniversary, these items and boosts could be added in the bundles and deals as well. We are long past the days where 2 advanced handbooks can be treated as anything less than a slap to the face to anyone paying anywhere near $25 for a value bundle. Paid gems are still a mixed bag. While the banners for these have improved, they are far from worthwhile under most circumstances. With no sign of generic awakening stones in any of the anniversary announcements or content that is dropped, this means that the only path to successfully unlocking a costume's full potential remains in the summons, which means that players must pull 6 copies of a single costume to unlock its full potential. Paid gems must be a reliable way of achieving this, or else they only serve as the opposite, and they cut against the desired effect that drives players away from spending. If someone pays, there needs to be some kind of guaranteed reward that is worth the investment. Free gems are a separate matter. though a full 200 pity is on a limited banner is still a little excessive because we're still trying to get a hold of 6 copies of a unit. So yeah. Of course, all of these complaints would disappear if there was a means through which players could, over time, unlock the full potential of each of their costumes. As I stated in part 1 of this series, I mostly passed on the New Year's banner because almost in its entirety due to this obstruction, where if it did not exist and there was a path to success, I would have happily pulled and paid just to get a hold of the costumes I wanted, then exercise the option to build them out over time. Next, create a social media presence that interacts with the community. Add community participation events that allow for players to take part in costume creation contests. Feature members of the community on occasion and appoint a liaison that acts as the voice of the developers to the community. Offer in-game rewards for any number of shares on a post. Keep it simple, fun, and upbeat. Generate enthusiasm through the community and garner additional goodwill towards the game. There is a biblical passage that discusses this very principle in the parable of the talents. The slothful servant buried his talents, while the wise servant used his talents to gain more. Much like the slothful servant, the developers of NieR Reincarnation have buried their talents in the earth. They need to use them to gain a greater reward. Finally, let's break this down a little bit further. Nowadays, it is not uncommon to pay $15 for a single streaming service subscription, which we might watch a couple hours per week. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I play NieR Reincarnation significantly more than I watch movies and shows. So for someone like me, investing this amount instead into NieR Reincarnation is a better use of these funds. Since I'm willing to lock in a renewal subscription for the streaming, I am trained to accept this as a possibility for a game. The subscription service is not new, and anyone who has played any number of MMORPGs is familiar with this, and willing to pay into pricing models like this if there is a continued value to be gained from it. Even if this is all that is given, players are willing to pay for a month. It opens the door, and it indefinitely opens up a larger investing pool. And it also allows for the bigger spenders to continue spending. So it's a win across the board. The spenders will spend, so there's no loss of revenue here. And if the value is boosted to reflect the current needs of the game, then they will continue to spend. It is all the extra subscriptions from the players who would never spend, or occasionally so, where this model really starts to show its value. Again, it is guaranteed revenue. Furthermore, it incentivizes newer players to invest in the game because of the added value. Every new player who invests financially will be far more likely to stick around. Just like the example of the gaming console, nobody purchases one of these to allow it to sit unused. They instead continue investing time and money into it so that the purchase is not seen as a loss. There is so much more that can be added to this, but for the sake of brevity, I will leave these tried and true methods for the consideration of all who have watched this series of videos. The theme of this series has been leveraging this exceptional product that is NieR Reincarnation, and properly doing so to allow the game to flourish, not just narratively, where it succeeds, but financially, where it falls short. Much like the developers who crafted this game, this video series has been a labor of love for me. It is my gift to the community, as well as the developers. I have sacrificed untold hours of my personal time contemplating, researching, structuring, and writing this series. Time that I chose not to play the game, but instead where I lent my own knowledge, life experience, and talent to help a bunch of perfect strangers, who I will never meet, but who have created value and art. I, and so many others, want to see this game flourish, and to realize its full potential. So it is here that I will wrap up this limited series with my gratitude to those who have given much of themselves to craft these wonderful experiences, the community who supports it, and my fellow content creators who give of themselves and their talents to elevate. So, until we meet again in the cage, peace out, y'all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.